Okay, everybody, welcome to week 5. And we are continuing on with taking all those things we learned last week about the accidentals and enharmonics, and we're going to take them into a new place, as well as introducing how we notate rest in music. This will be the first video, and then the second video will be how to do the various assignments. But let's go by way of review, and let's take a look at just some of the stuff we did last week. Quick review. The idea that in our musical system, our two most basic, smallest intervals are the whole and the half step. And when you look at a keyboard, the keyboard is the most visual of all the instruments. You can actually see distances. So I'll give you an example. When we say this is C, C, D, E, we're saying that distance of C, D, E, 1, 2, 3, that's a third because I went 3. We can see how big that 3 is, and we can compare it to, say, C, D, E, F, G. We can see this distance of C, D, E, F, G, that's 5. That's a fifth. We see how much bigger a fifth is than a third, or the octave. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That's 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's an octave, and we can literally see how big that octave is, as compared to a third. And the two smallest steps we've discussed are the whole step, and we can visually see that on a keyboard. And the definition I gave you last week was the whole step is the distance between two tones. Here's an A, there's a B. So between these two tones, there is one tone in between, which makes that a whole step. Same thing with up here, between this black key, and by now you know that black key has two different names. It could be an A sharp, or it could be a B flat. Either way, this black key, the distance from this black key to this white key, is also a whole step because there's something in between. The half steps are the smallest intervals, and they've only got, there's nothing in between them. They're right up against each other. So if we were to hear those sounds on the keyboard, this is what we're going to hear. That is a whole step. Do, re. There's another whole step. It's another whole step. Do, re. Now here's a half step. And if you actually sing that to yourself, you'll find your voice barely moves. As opposed to the whole step. Got a little distance there. Half. So just pick some random tones. Here's a half. That's half up. There's a half down. Here's a whole up. Do, re, and a whole down. I think probably for beginning music students, it's probably easiest to hear that half step because it sounds like Jaws. Okay, so that is the whole step and the half step that we talked about. And then we talked about the idea that we have our accidentals and the sharps, and this is also on our reading. A sharp will raise the sound of a tone a half step, and the flat, which looks like this, will lower the tone a half step. And the doubles, this little X is a double sharp, so this says raise the tone 2 half steps, and the double flat says lower the tone 2 half steps. So if we look at our keyboard, we can see that, let's just say this is an E. See, C, D, E. If we take this E and lower it a half step, that's E flat. That's E flat. But it can also be called C, D. See, there's D, but we can raise D a half step. There's D sharp. So this note can be called E flat, because it's E flat, or it can be called D sharp, because it's D sharp, up. Okay, so that has 2 different names. That's an enharmonic. Enharmonic is when a tone has the same sound but different names. And this has one more other thing. It could also be called F double flat, see? E flat, D sharp, also F double flat because it's F. Lowered once is here, F flat. Lowered another time, there's the F double flat. So all these are going to come into play as we start getting to scales and chords, all right? So just realize that every single key has 3 different names except for this guy here. He's only a G sharp and A flat. Okay, so that is pretty much, that is pretty much what the last week's work was. Again, I just did a quick review. Actual steps, accidentals, and enharmonics. So let us now get into what we're going on with this one. We're going to discuss the idea of diatonic and chromatic moves, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Let's go here to our keyboard. If we're talking about, and this has to do with our major scales, if we're talking about a chromatic move, chromatic says, and this is also in your readings, chromatic says if we go up a half step, let's call this C, then the question is, well, that's C to what? C to C sharp. Chromatic, we're going to keep the same letter. So I said C, then I kept the letter. C, C sharp, C, C sharp, C, C sharp. If I say diatonic, I have to go to the next letter. So instead of saying C to C sharp, I'm going to say C, D flat. See? And I've got it up here. Let's see, where is it? There, oops. There we go. So this is this week's chart. And here's diatonic or chromatic, all right? So they're important, and I wrote here because they clarify key centers, melodic movement, and intervallic relationships, the distances. So diatonic is the next adjacent letter, so letters just move up or down by letters, all right? Chromatic, we're going to keep the same letter, change the accidental. So here's a way to see the same sounds written twice. This sound is going G to A flat, but it sounds exactly the same as G moving to G sharp. G, A flat, G, G sharp. So on the piano, this is what it looks like. G, G sharp, G, A flat, right? G, G sharp, G, A flat. So it sounds exactly the same. The only difference is in written notation, we can write it one way as a diatonic half step. I went a half step, but I called it G to A. See? Chromatic, I kept the same letter. G to G sharp. All right, sounds the same. And again, this would all have to do with any number of things. How is a melody moving? What key centers are we in? Key of C, key of F, or maybe we're in one of the sharp keys. E, if I'm in the key of E, I'm going to be going to G sharps and not A flat. Things like that. Intervallic relationships. Here's what I mean by that. If I have, let's say, let's see, good off. Here we go. A to C sharp. Here's a whole scale. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is 1. This is the third. So we would say that the third note of an A scale, A, B, C sharp, is C sharp, as opposed to saying A, B, D flat. See, I skipped a letter. I needed to continue to move diatonic in the scales, and that puts us over here. That's why when we have our major scales, let's do this over here. These are all the different major scales, which are fundamental to learning anything in music. And as we have our different scales, we can see here, this is a D major scale. This says we're going to go D up diatonic. D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. One letter follows the next, that's diatonic. And this has a sharp on the F line. This has a sharp on the C line, which means we're going to do this scale, but the F is going to be sharp and the C is going to be sharp. So here is a D major scale. See what I did? So when we say the D major scale, when we say the D major scale, we're going to say D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. We will not call this F sharp G flat, even though F sharp and G flat are the same key. We want to stay diatonic. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B. Same thing with here. We do not call this C sharp D flat, even though it's the same, because we want to stay diatonic. One letter follows the next. Now, let me show you another little thing down here. See, here's a different scale. D flat scale. Starts on D, ends on D, but now all B's, E's, A's, D's, and G's are flat. So D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, C, D flat. So I'm going to play the D flat scale. See, that's D flat scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. D flat, E flat, F, G flat. So see this sound? Over here, that sound is called G flat. But over here, that same sound is called F sharp. And it all has to do with rules of diatonic movement, chromatic movement, and of course, enharmonics. Now let me go back really quick, because the question is, well, why is this guy an F sharp? And why is this guy a C sharp? Why is this guy an E flat? And why, etc., etc.? Why these ones? Well, this is why. All major scales, and the major scale is the backbone upon all music theory. Any understanding of melody, key signatures, chords has to do with the major scales. And all major scales are built the same way, with a specific structure of whole and half steps. They all have the same structure. They will move whole, whole, half. Whole, 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 half. So here's a C major scale. Goes right on up. And the cool thing about the C major scale is it's all white keys. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. So when we hear that scale, remember there's all different kinds of scales. In fact, I'll show you in a second. So if we say, well, how is this scale constructed? From That's a whole step. See? Something's in between. Okay, now what's this one? Also a whole step, because that's in between. Then, that's a half step. So you see, oops. We start with a whole. First we move a whole step, then we move a whole step, then we move a half step. And then we continue on. So we go whole, now another whole, now a half. Now the chart says a whole, another whole, another whole, and finally a half. So, see, whole, another whole, then a half here, then from here to here a whole, from here to here a whole, and finally the half step. And all of the scales are built the same way. So when you look at the scales, every single scale is built with the same diatonic movement. One letter follows the next. We don't skip letters, okay? Or we don't repeat letters. For instance, see this D flat, A flat, B flat, C, D flat. We don't call that C sharp. We aren't going to say A flat, B flat, C, C sharp. It's A flat, B flat, C, D flat. Okay? However, in this scenario, that sound is C sharp. But in this scenario, that same sound is D flat. So all of these scales, the 12 major scales, are constructed to say it doesn't matter which scale you look at. They're all going to be built whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So let's do an E flat scale. I'm going to start an E flat, go to E flat. Here's the scale. Whoops. E flat. Okay. And as I did that scale, I went whole, another whole, half, whole, 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 half. Let's do E major. No, not E major. Let's go A major. From here, I went up a whole. Whole. That's A, B, C sharp. Now from here, I got to go a half. I got to go whole. I got to go whole. Got to go whole. And half. And if you look at the scale chart, look at the A scale. Where's the A scale? There it is. It says go A to A, but to make it come out whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, you got to have an F sharp, C sharp, C sharp, which is why that scale is A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, because that makes the scale major. It has the major sound. And this is so important that any student that is seriously studying music, this is the first thing you learn, how to play all of your major scales. Without this understanding of the major scales, the 12 major scales, all the other stuff will not happen. Okay? Being able to read music, being able to understand key signatures, being able to understand how chords work, it will not happen. This is uber important. Okay? So, let's check out the chart. Oops, I've got the chart. Let's take a look at this. And again, I'm going to week 5. And what I've got this week, okay, I give you the diatonic and chromatic notation, the major scale charts. Oh, here we go. So the other new thing this week is rhythms and rest in music notation. Okay, so just the same way we can notate value, a whole note, we know that's 4 beats. Well, we can notate rest. So we can notate that this is a sound sustained for 4 beats. This is rest for 4 beats. The half note looks like this. There's a half rest. We rest for 2 beats. Now take a look at this. Kind of looks the same, but you'll see it on manuscript. The quarter note looks like this. We hear that for 1 beat. And the quarter rest looks like a little lightning bolt. Rest for 1 beat. There's the 8th note, the half of a beat. And the 8th rest looks like this. And they made a mistake here. That's not whole note. That's obviously a 16th note. 16th rest. Okay, so let me show you how that works in the on music notation. You'll have an assignment, and I'll do this later on my other video that talks about rhythm performance. Now I'm going to show you. This time, I'm going to give you rest in there. So let's see. Let's just give you a quarter rest, half rest, and whole rest. We'll just go with that right now. And let's see if we can read music with rest. Let's calibrate. Tap, 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 tap. All right, so let's see what this is. We got to count to 4. So this says this note is going to be sustained for 2 beats. And then on beat 3 and beat 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Silence. You will not hear any sound for 2 beats. Now, I'll have students, they'll do this, but they don't count. They go 1, 2, and then they'll kind of rest however long they think they should rest, but it's still got to go 1, 2, rest, rest. 1, this is on beat 1. This is on beat 2 and beat 3 because it's a half note, so it gets 2 beats. 1, 2, 3, and on the last beat, because we're counting to 4, on the last beat, we rest, and that's a quarter rest. So listen to what that sounds like. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, rest. And if you're going to tap it, 1, 2, rest, rest. 1, 2, 3, rest. Okay, and of course, when you on this program, you don't have to hold down those whole notes or half notes. Let's see what's happening here. How do we read this? We count to 4. That's a half rest. 1, 2. This guy comes in on beat 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, and. That's the first measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, and. This is 1, 1, and rest. That comes in on beat 3, and we rest on beat 4. You want to hear it? 1, 2, 3, rest, rest. Hear it. Listen again. 1, 2, 3. 1 and rest. Now we can play it. 1, 2, here we go. Rest, rest. 2. Wait, 1 and rest. Boom, boom. I'm sorry, I said 2. I should have said 3. That's 1, 2, boom. Look what happens here. That's on beat 1. That's on beat 4. So this is going 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. I think I can do that. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. All right, let's do one more. Actually, I'm kind of hoping to see a whole rest up there. I'll do 2 more. See if it comes up. How does this go? 1, 2, 3, 4, and rest, rest. All right, I can do that. 1, 2, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now let me show you a big mistake that I'll see students do is they may know that this goes 1, 2, 3, rest, 1, 2, 3, 4, but they don't have good sense of time. So for instance, I will perform this rhythm poorly. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, rest, 1, 2, 3, 4. Totally not correct. I'll do it wrong again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rest, rest, play, rest, play, play. See? Now let's do it correctly. 1, 2, 3, go. Rest, rest, play, rest. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's the trick. It doesn't make doesn't do you any good to look at a rhythm and say it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and rest, rest. That does you no good if you can't do it in time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and rest, rest. So my suggestion to you is when you practice these, you do practice. You cannot get better at reading rhythm unless you consistently practice it, okay? Now, when I make my other video about the assignments for the week, you will, I'll be more specific on that, okay? But I just wanted to give you a little taste of that. So that is the new stuff this week, week 5. And you basically, the idea of diatonic and chromatic notation, why sometimes we would, say F to F sharp is a chromatic move, F to G flat is a diatonic move, major scale formula, major scales chart, and we talked about the rest of music notation. My next video will be going through the various homework assignments for today. All right, guys, enjoy. Have a good week.